back on the record, were there any markets that took to the campaign even better than you had anticipated? Because there's obviously some markets there which are, in terms of women's football, there's just me. In the US, obviously, it's huge and bigger. Here, it's still growing. Were there any other kind of European markets where it was, it hadn't quite had the effect you wanted it to have, or was everyone kind of, the 80% negativity disappearance? It's amazing.
Yeah, I think from what we saw was quite consistent in terms of those results across markets, which was really interesting. And I think a lot of that comes down to strength of concept. Everything that was done from the beginning was all around hope, not hate. That really fueled how we brought these positive pep talks and how we shaped it in market. With cultural nuances, as we discussed, there were gifts that we might use that had local language and certain changes to sort of tailor them to the specific markets. But in terms of the trend of the ultimate objective, which was how can we raise positivity ultimately and diminish negativity, we saw that 86%, as we talked about, from quarterfinal to final, was quite consistent across all those markets, which I think was ultimately something we were really proud of in terms of those numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it was, as Alex said, it was consistent. Spain did really well. I think they have a strong women's football base, and Barca making the final, winning as well. I think that was big for them. Maybe if there was one that surprised me a bit more was French market. And again, it's because they've actually got a really strong women's football heritage in Lyon, but it maybe gets outshone a little bit by like the men's football over there. But again, like we saw the same kind of levels of interaction and everything from them really consistently.
I think to add to that, something that was quite interesting from an executional perspective was what we saw in terms of gifts playing that key role. Around driving positivity. Going back to what we were saying in terms of being able to see each game week live and take out these, signals around data, around sentiment, we could see that gifts were really driving that positive interaction. And what that meant was that we could pivot our creative strategy midway through, really up the gift production. We created bespoke gifts that were around these are pep talks, that were more focused towards team colours, more positive gifts, and we saw continued trend in those gifts that were then sort of pushing towards positivity, which was great to see. And I think ultimately for the final we saw something like 68 million impressions against the gifts.
Was it that much?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. You remember the numbers.
Yeah. Which was a big part in terms of pushing those positive comments and raising that positivity, and was a big factor in terms of driving down that negativity that we saw across the tournament.
So Alex, just following on from that, do you want to say a bit about how on the agency side you can really combine human creativity and intelligence with the AI tools that you have available now?
Yeah, I think something that's a real focus for us as an agency is how we tap into data AI tools. We're very lucky to have Epsilon and various other tools available to us at Publicis. From a talent perspective, in terms of how we are identifying key talent, how we're reviewing talent, how are we understanding scale, reach, all those points. But what's really important to have that alongside is how that human expertise is there to interpret data as well. It's there's still a key role in terms of bringing in the right human expertise to understand how that data is running and understand, for example, local market interpretation with it. So even though we might be pushed one way in terms of talent that we might be going with, having that sort of individual human expertise around the nuance of how someone may resonate within an individual market is so important. So ultimately, the combination of those two are super important in terms of building that picture, and in addition, building that picture and making that informed decision about how we move forward.
I think if we were to do it now, like the use of AI tools in it would be like so much more prevalent, like in all the ways that you said, Alex. Especially in like the data and planning, you'd just be able to like process a lot of that up more up front. A lot of the reporting, we'd be able to process that quicker. And then like they say, generating content and stuff in more kind of real time on the back of it, I think we could do. There's lots of interactive elements that we had in the fan zone and then going into the broadcast, and you could really fuel that with data and stats a lot more. And I think you've seen the likes of Amazon do that, like in the Men's Champions League, like the way they have stats that overlay like the players and stuff. So I think we the opportunity for it is to like push it even further and make it even more interactive and interesting for people who are following the game.
Yeah, I think we were having to make very quick decisions between game weeks.
Sure.
There was a lot of different data inputs, and like you say, being able to tap into AI tools that we may not have available would better inform how we might develop, for example, like that creative strategy with GIFs even further. In agreement, I think it would help to sort of speed up those decisions and ultimately make more of decisions in line with those.